morning. I am really honored to be standing here where my very dear friend Amy stands with you on a regular basis. It's one of the great privileges of my life to call Amy my friend. And I'm here this morning with my partner Heidi, and look forward to getting to know you as best we can in the short time that we're here. We have 4 children. Grown children that are spread out all over the place doing lovely things, and but just really appreciative of your hospitality and warm welcome and Amy's invitation to be here in your midst. I always like to begin with breathing, and so I'm going to invite you, if you would, to take a slow inhale through your nose and a long releasing exhale from the mouth. And one more. And let's be extravagant and do another one. The world outside this room is very loud these days. I'm sure all of us have noticed that. The world out there is filled with opinions and a sense of urgency and rage and divisiveness, and for most of us, exhaustion. But just for a few moments, we can let that noise subside. Because here, would be my guess, this is where you practice presence, and not so much as an escape from the world, but as a return. And each breath that we take quietly recognizes this deep, ancient, primordial wisdom that we all carry with us, that's unique to us, that's just below the surface. And so in this beautiful, unassuming, modest structure that you gather in each week, we come here to let our mud settle. We come here to fill our cup so that when we do re-enter the world shortly, we do so awake, and we do so grounded, and we do so fearlessly. There is in Tibetan Buddhism, they call this state of being warriorship, which has nothing to do with violence, but has everything to do with being courageous and fearless in the world that we live in. There are old stories from China about irrigation channels carved by hand through dry valleys. They're still there if you choose to go and see them. And no one remembers exactly who built them. There are no monuments, no names recorded. But whenever the rains come, the water fills those quiet channels, and the people downstream prosper. And it's the river that gets the credit for all of that. That's actually what authentic self-care and other care looks like. As you well know, it's not glamorous or loud or egocentric. It's steady and generous and kind, and most importantly, unseen. Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching, puts it so nicely. He said, the highest good is like water. Water benefits all things and does not compete. Water actually is one of our oldest teachers. In fact, we're kind of made up primarily of water. It's soft and yielding, yet it's patient and it's persistent. It shows us how to move through the world with grace rather than force. But also, water carries with it a fierce memory. On occasions, it reminds us of its immense power in the form of hurricanes and typhoons and tsunamis. All of us remember the devastating floods from Hurricane Helene that swept across western North Carolina and the long, painful aftermath that continues to this day. And it stands as a not so subtle reminder that water will not confine itself to the irrigation channels of our own creation. It will not be domesticated. It will not always be gentle. And yet, in its daily movements, water models a way of being that nourishes rather than destroys. The quiet rituals that keep our individual and collective lives from drying up, like rest, and gratitude, and deep listening, and compassion, and kindness, and gentleness, and service. These are the subtle channels through which our humanity flows. They are the soft pathways that continue to sustain us in the very complicated world that we all find ourselves in. Alan Watts, in his beautiful book, The Waterway, wrote that water doesn't struggle with obstacles, it simply finds a way around, over, and through them. And he says, and I quote, "When you stop trying to force life, you will find that it flows perfectly well by itself." So to live the waterway is not to abandon responsibility or accept life passively. Rather, it is to cultivate this deep responsiveness as an ability to meet life as it is, to adapt without losing ourselves in what the Buddhists call the dust of the world. To trust that when we align with the present moment, we don't have to worry quite so much about outcomes. As Watts reminds us, the art of life is not a wrestling match. It is more like a dance. It's like water, actually. You don't push it. You just let it move on its own. In the end, water teaches us to honor both its gentleness and honor its strength, to remember that the same elements that bring life to the world can also transform it in an instant. And so as we practice the daily channels that keep us supple and awake and connected with each other, learning to flow with life, even as we remain humbly aware of its power, is important work that we are to be about. The waterway of living is not weakness. I assure you of that. It is a quiet strength that I actually sense in you and in this community. The strength that comes with living in alignment with a deeper wisdom. The strength that doesn't need applause or validation or celebrity. And when we live the waterway, gratitude naturally arises in us. Gratitude for when we are in tune with life's deeper currents. Gratitude for the clarity that comes when we stop striving to be noticed or to be seen. Now, we all know that we are living in a time that is obsessed with recognition, with attention, with applause, with celebrity. It seems like the louder the voice, the larger the platform. Even our highest offices echo this hunger for validation. We have a sitting president who demands admiration and loyalty, chasing the symbols of governance while neglecting the quieter virtues that define it. And yet, no Nobel Prize, no triumphal arch, no gilded ballroom will ever be a substitute for integrity. Peace and prosperity can never be performative. They grow only in the soil of honesty and restraint and compassion. The truest leaders and the healthiest souls do their work quietly and let the river get the credit. Lao Tzu puts it in a very lovely way. He says, when the best leader's work is done, the people say, we did it all by ourselves. Of course, meanwhile, in the midst of all this, the world that we live in continues to ache and groan. Millions of Americans, people that we know, live one medical bill away from bankruptcy. Families ration prescriptions to keep food on the table. The simple dignity of affordable health care slips further out of many people's reach, and the gap between the haves and the have-nots widens every single day. And we're told to chase success, to chase the American dream, to make sacrifices, to prove our worth. But the faster we climb, the easier it becomes to forget those who cannot keep pace. This is more than an economic failure. In my opinion, it's a failure of memory, a forgetting of our shared humanity with each other. Currently, the top 1% of U.S. households now hold about 30.8% of all wealth, up from 22.8% in 1989. That should take your breath away. And so we breathe deeply when we gather here each week, when we come here to cultivate our souls, which I believe is our most important vocation in life, to speak truth to power with kindness and compassion. These are not luxuries. They are how we ultimately stay human in systems that prefer us dumb and numb and distracted. Self-care and other care, rightly understood, is integrity in motion. It looks like resting before burnout teaches us the lesson itself. It looks like honest conversation and civil dialogue when cynicism seems much easier. It looks like refusing to mirror the cruelty of the culture that surrounds us every single day. These very small acts, a pause, a kindness, a universal truth that we speak gently to another, these all become our channels of healing and transformation. They are the modern equivalents of digging irrigation trenches. They're invisible but essential, and they're life-giving to us. And when they become our spiritual disciplines, which they must, then gratitude becomes the quiet hum beneath all of it. Gratitude that takes the form of a felt sense of enoughness. A recognition of alignment and resonance suffices. Lao Tzu is describing the power that comes when we stop forcing and start flowing with the deep primordial wisdom that exists within each of us. And when we act from a deep sense of presence as individuals and as communities instead of panic and instead of reactivity, our lives begin to harmonize with something greater than ego. And a culture that is addicted to performance, authenticity, and truth-telling seems subversive. To rest and allow other people to do the same is to resist a system that profits from exhaustion. To tell the truth fearlessly is to disturb the machinery of deceit. To care deeply and quietly is to practice revolution. Imagine for a moment a river winding through a wounded land, a land polluted and diverted and neglected, and still somehow it finds its way to the sea. Now imagine that same current flowing through you, steady, clear, persistent, life-giving, fearless. So ask yourself this morning, as you think about your life, where can I soften instead of harden? Where can I bring calm where there is confusion? Where can I let truth flow through me without needing credit or without needing any applause? It is my opinion that the world does not need more celebrity. What it needs is depth. It needs people whose calm steadies the boardroom and the Thanksgiving table. People whose integrity outlasts this moment. People whose care begins within and then ripples out into the world. I am ordained in the Plum Village tradition of engaged Buddhism. And the late Thich Nhat Hanh, when he was a young monk in Vietnam, was deeply concerned about the state of people, his people, who were fleeing Vietnam as the war raged on. And more people, the young, the old, were getting into small fishing boats and going out into the open waters where there were storms and pirates and the indifference of nations that ultimately would turn away from assisting and helping them. And Thai, which is what we call Thich Nhat Hanh, Thai in Vietnamese means teacher. Thai was at a peace conference in Singapore, and he heard about the suffering of his people, and he quietly and from a distance organized rescue missions with boats and supplies and fishermen to bring relief to the people stranded out in the open waters. And he also assigned younger monks to go out and to get on those boats as they were casting off into the open waters with this simple instruction: that once you get out into the open waters in these crowded boats, people will ultimately panic. And your job is a simple one. Simply go to the center of the boat and get down into your normal seated meditation posture and begin meditating. And you'll never guess what happened next. The children started paying attention to the young monk in the middle of the boat in the lotus position, meditating. And they came, as children do, out of curiosity and sat down and started meditating with the young monk. And then the parents followed suit. And then everybody else followed suit. And slowly but surely, that young monk lowered the center of gravity to the lowest part in the boat, assuring that the people in the boat would be safe and the boat would not be swamped in the open waters. I think that might be our task, wherever you may find yourself in your life in the coming days over the holidays, to be the most mindful person in the room, to lower the center of gravity so that people can be safe in your presence. I've also noticed that people have a way of gravitating toward the most mindful person in the room. It's a simple task. And sometimes all it takes is just one mindful person. Just one. My hope for you, my hope for myself, my hope for my own family is that we would be more like water, that we would be resilient and unafraid of low places, that we would be humble enough to serve people who are not like us, who are radically different than we are, and strong enough to endure, especially during these times. And may your stillness, may your mindfulness provide you with clarity. May your compassion transform whatever your little corner of the world looks like. May your rest become your resistance. And in all things, may gratitude guide you. Every time you live in alignment with your highest values, that best version of yourself, when your life moves quietly with the current of what is true and authentic, and recognition and validation no longer matter. And when healing finally comes, and it will, when healing finally comes to a neighbor, to a nation, to the weary self with you, may the river get all of the credit. And so let us end as we began by coming back into our breath, a slow inhale through our nose and a long releasing exhale through our mouths. And again. And one more time, but on the exhale, I want you to exhale in a way where everybody in the room can hear it. So let's try it again on the inhale and the exhale. One more time. May it be so.